We're
Yeah.
live. I think we're live.
We're live, yes.
Okay, assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, brothers and sisters. Welcome to this live stream conversation between myself, Salman Butt, our brother Subboor, Ahmad, and of course Arslan Hidayat from Talk to East Turkestan. We're talking about this coalition of a broad base of the Muslim community, mashallah tabarakallah, in the UK, calling ourselves Stand for Uyghurs. We have, as part of our launch of this excellent campaign, inshallah, we have the 1st of July demonstration of solidarity outside the Chinese embassy in London. Nearest tube stations are Regent's Park and Great Portland Street, and we're planning to congregate there from 5 to 8 p.m. inshallah. If you want, you can come earlier, spend the day there, but it's very, very important that we all turn out on this day in particular. Just to get the conversation started, a lot of people are asking, Subboor and Arslan, whoever wants to take this, why are we doing this on a Thursday? Why not a Saturday? What's special about this day?
Yeah, so we had this discussion. Demonstrations usually take place on the weekend. However, this isn't just any other day. This is the 1st of July. It's a 100-year anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party since its founding, so 1921 to 2021. It's going to be a momentous occasion for the Chinese Communist Party. They're actually going to be celebrating all across the world. I was just reading before this live stream that in China, you know, whether people like it or they don't, everywhere there are signs, 100-year anniversary, appreciate the party, follow the party, pictures of Xi Jinping. So the 100-year anniversary is a big, big deal. And of course, the protests for the Uyghur brothers and sisters in East Turkestan is something that we all need to be doing on a regular basis anyway. So those protests that we do in the future, inshallah, they can take place on a Saturday. But this particular one, it needed to be a Thursday because of that anniversary. This is an occasion which they have been preparing for the last 10 years. This is a very big occasion for them. And we want to remind them that actually we are aware of your history for the last 100 years, the Cultural Revolution, the Great Leap Forward, Tiananmen Square, the oppression of the Tibetans, the Mongolians, and of course the Uyghur Muslims as well, and other Turkic groups. So we want to use this anniversary of theirs to actually remind them that there's a whole community of Muslims who are not going to accept the way that they're treating our fellow brethren.
Yeah, I mean, it's important that we get this across to the brothers and sisters as well, that it's not just us deciding this. Our Uyghur brothers and sisters from, for example, the World Uyghur Congress, Abdul Hakim Idris, who's been talking to us about this, for example, who was here a few weeks ago. They've been saying that on this day, they want, the Uyghur brothers and sisters, they want us to turn out and show solidarity on this day in particular. So it's really important that if we have the opportunity, we can actually turn out and show that solidarity, show that moral support with the Uyghur brothers and sisters, because one of the most poisonous whispers of shaitan to our brothers and sisters that are suffering is he'll come to them and say, look, where are the Muslims? They've left you. The Ummah has forsaken you.
Yeah.
Arslan, what if someone says, what's the point of this? What's the point of going to this demonstration? What do you say to that?
Well, for those that say, normally for the ones that are saying what's the point, they generally don't have any other option or way to go about it themselves. This is what we are able to do at the most, especially from looking at from an Islamic point of view. You should be doing all that you can to, whether it be stop oppression or whether it be in your dawah, you should be doing all that you can. And here, with a lot of the people that inshallah will be attending, you're not organizing it. You're not, you're not going through all the trends of what it needs to get the permissions to hold a protest. And Allah has made it so easy for you, right? You just got to show up. And another thing people need to understand that while yes, the Uyghur, we're talking about Uyghurs at the moment, but a lot of especially and inshallah to this protest, not just Muslims need to show up. Anyone from any race, any belief, even non-belief, show up if you're a human being, because the Uyghurs are not just being trampled. It's everyone, anyone believer or non-believer, as long as they're against the CCP, they are being, oppressed, and so people need to show their support. So we need to use all the energy that we have, and let's just say from a Muslim perspective, from our brothers and sisters who probably their parents or grandparents came from, unfortunately, a lot of these Muslim majority countries are sort of oppressive in nature. Though these Muslim majority countries themselves don't have a space to protest or to use your speech. And Allah has given you the opportunity, whether you're in the UK or Australia or Canada, wherever you are, Allah has put you in a situation, so you should be using the tools and the means that you have to do your bit. It may not look as much. It may just be a droplet from one person coming up, but hundreds and thousands of droplets will eventually turn into a wave, metaphorically. So, and imagine this is your only route to go about doing this. So take the opportunity that Allah has given you.
Yeah, it's so important and it's for our ego as well, right? I always tell people that sometimes it's good for your ego not to be the person on stage or doing something that you think is materially, in the spotlight, but it's good to just be one body in a mass of bodies, right? Sometimes, whether it's when you're praying salah, in congregation, you're just one of like an undifferentiated mass of believers who are, standing firm in rows, or whether it's in other areas. And this example is, where we want to be as part of a body that is standing shoulder to shoulder, side by side with our Uyghur brothers and sisters, sending a message to them, sending the message to the Chinese Communist Party as well. It's really important to do that, and those who kind of belittle, I suppose, these types of activities, we really have to think, what is our purpose of being on this earth in the first place? We think that, oh, it's not going to change the whole situation, but you and me, we're not tasked with changing the whole situation. We're tasked with speaking out against an evil, for example, trying to change something with our hand. The Prophet said, who amongst you sees an evil, a single evil, he has to change it with his hand. And if he's unable, then he has to change it or try and change it with his speech, with his tongue. And this is an opportunity to stand up and change something with your speech. Whether you can do it or not, that's up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to, put, you can bring a flame to a candle, but whether Allah, whether it burns is Allah's decree, right? Taking the cause to the effect. And this campaign, Stand for Uyghurs Coalition, this is a longer term campaign, which Subboor and I and other brothers and sisters have been planning for many weeks and months now, where we actually take someone through a journey of getting motivated about this topic, about showing how much power your voice can hold, especially in the Western world, Muslims in Europe, in Americas, Australasia, being informed with correct, accurate knowledge about what's happening to the Uyghur brothers and sisters. You saw the Uyghur Tribunal a few weeks ago, giving expert witnesses, academics, and victims, and even Chinese guard whistleblowers, right?
Yeah.
Giving testimony about what's going on there, and also connecting the Uyghurs to the story of the Uyghurs to the broader Muslim Ummah story, right? The history of that. So we have motivation, knowledge, and then most importantly, the effective action part, right? So to channel our brothers and sisters into and give them resources for effective action, whether that's getting tawfiq from Allah, dua campaigns, for example, khutbah templates to go up and down the country. There was khutbah day, National Khutbah Day last Friday, yesterday, 25th of June. Alhamdulillah, many masjids and Islamic centers and Islamic societies at university up and down the country were doing a khutbah about the Uyghur brothers and sisters and their plight. Even masjids that we don't normally see, quote unquote, politically active and doing kind of political things, but because this is such a serious and pressing issue, and it happens to be an uncontroversial issue, alhamdulillah. No one's going to start spying on your mosque because you're criticizing China, because everyone it's mainstream kind of policy in our own government to take shots at China as well. Obviously they have their own reasons, we have our own reasons, centered around justice and stopping the actual genocide and speaking out against it. But it's really important that these effective actions are brought to light. So the Tawfiq social media campaign material. There's also one of the partners, for example, of the coalition, Cordoba Foundation. The Cordoba Foundation, they hosted an important meeting last week with a barrister about raising funds for a challenge, a court case with the ICC against Chinese officials, right? Just like they did, with with Serbian officials, for example, and so forth. So the ICJ is when states take each other to court. That's not going to happen. But the ICC, the International Criminal Court, is when individuals take individuals to court for war crimes. So we can take Chinese ministers and the president and all these senior ministers to court, such that anytime they set foot into another country, they can be arrested, right, for war crimes, for example. This is important. This requires money. Muslims have money, but this is an example of where we can channel our effective action. Another part of this effective action of the campaign is universities, for example. We've spoken to one of the campaign coalition partners is VOSIS, for example, Federation of Student Islamic Societies, Lighthouse Initiative, which was formerly Students for Syria. So students that have a background in being active and are there to train, inform universities, train students how to be active in this area. For example, they've already led many campaigns on university campuses about severing links between China and between the Chinese Communist Party and the universities. And Subboor and I have been discussing extending that to other universities as well up and down the country. So it's important that this is the first step, but we need to show a big presence, inshallah. We need to show our brothers and sisters that we're standing for them outside the Chinese embassy on the 1st of July.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to add a few things about each one of these particular things that is going to be part of this campaign. So take one thing about sanctioning Chinese Communist Party officials, and that means that if they step into, say, another country, then they could get possibly charged or their assets seized. We have to understand every single one of these items has been well thought out. So China is a incredibly corrupt system. They have an incredibly corrupt system. Even according to official Chinese Communist Party narrative, corruption is the biggest issue that they're facing. Now, what happens with these Chinese Communist Party officials who are corrupt is that they take their money and they actually come to Europe, they actually come to the UK, they come to Germany, they come to Australia, and they hide their money there because that's safe from, because they have a lot of internal politics. I even was reading that, you see, when they are even swindling a Western company, there's internal politics within the Chinese Communist Party where they're doing each other over. So there's so much corruption. At least 1 million officials have been arrested in terms of corruption. So money is so important. And remember, everything we're doing from a monetary perspective. We're trying to get their attention by showing them, actually, everything that you're doing, we're going to react in a way that's going to cost you money. So something that's very important to understand is if we try to appeal to the emotions of the Chinese Communist Party, to try and reason with their, with some conscience that they may have, that's basically a dead horse, right? That's just dead in the water. There's no point trying that. What we can do is simply in the same way that when it comes to other governments who are, carrying out oppression against Muslims, we could simply say, well, okay, that's fair enough. If you just don't want to listen to us and you just want to carry on, that's fair according to you. What we're going to do is we're going to actually cause you monetary damage in a very legal way. So we're going to boycott your goods. We're going to try and start disinvestment. We're going to actually, just like we had here in London, outside one of the car manufacturers, I think it's Volkswagen. a protest that, you know, they have a factory in Urumqi. You know, we're going to continuously do things, because the thing is, something that's very important for everyone to understand. China has a social contract with its population. The social contract is they will let go of some freedoms as long as they have economic growth. And they need to grow at a very strong level each year to maintain that growth. Because if they don't reach those levels, even if they drop by a couple of percent, that means millions of people who are unemployed, and there's no social welfare system there. So you'll have mass rebellion. You'll have Tiananmen Square on steroids. So if we can cause a outpouring of emotion amongst the Muslims so that they stop actually buying Chinese goods and they actually slow down the Chinese economy, even by a few percent, which, you know, these boycotts do really work. There's going to be severe consequences. You know, people think China is the Chinese Communist Party is this Goliath, which is untouchable, and it's completely, you know, unaffected by what little musings a bunch of ants are doing. It's not like that at all. There's lots of fragilities in terms of their economy. There's lots of fragilities in terms of their image. They wouldn't be, as Arslan points out, you know, they wouldn't be spending millions or whatever it is on counter propaganda documentaries, jumping onto Twitter if it wasn't affecting them in this wolf warrior diplomacy. So the fact is, everything that we're doing, it's having a significant impact. It is having a significant impact. If it was not, why would they continuously attack activists, right? Like Arslan would tell you, anywhere he goes, they start turning up. They're probably going to turn up here as well. So it's having a direct impact.
What kind of stuff do they do, Arslan?
You literally just need to, like, besides the normal sort of trolling your stream or trolling your videos, writing comments, they make pretty sophisticated videos. There was a video only 2 days ago. I don't know if you guys saw this.
I saw it,
but, yeah, like, for example, I made a sincere dua, you know, making dua to Allah to destroy the Communist Party of China. And then they link that with, like, actual terrorist videos of, like, you know, there's terrorist type, and then saying that I had some guests on the other week saying that people should stop supporting them because, you know, they are linked to me and I'm part of this terrorist regime, and look, you know, taking snippets. So with me, they take it to that level. And Subboor, you sort of had this as well, but you know, it's quite interesting, and people, unfortunately, those who aren't aware of how Chinese propaganda is or works, will sort of buy into that. Or, for example, the other day when we saw those Uyghurs saying, "We are free, we are happy."
So just before you get into that, let's elaborate a little bit on this angle, and I think this is very important. Arslan has repeatedly been called a terrorist, right? And I this was like, this is normal. But then what's surprising is the way that they try and take the smallest statement that he makes, and they just try and say, okay, there you go, he's a terrorist. And what's interesting is, if you listen to his talks, he says the standard Muslim narrative, which is, you know, we're not here to support any terrorist activities, any violent extremist group, any militant groups. Yet they realize that, look, the Uyghur issue is getting a lot of traction from the Western world. What is the easiest way to completely discredit the Uyghur activism across the world, and to get the Western governments and the Western population, who have a significant impact politically, to get away from this, is by simply saying these guys are terrorists. So although, and Arslan's been doing this, and since I've been with him and I noticed these attacks, I've been doing this, we openly state, we're not calling for any form of violent activism. We're calling for legal activism within the law, peaceful, pacifist, yet time and time again, they're continuously trying to link us to terrorism, to the point that I've come to realize that actually it's a one-trick pony they have. Because if you openly state that, okay, everybody, like you mentioned in the beginning, Salman, that some masajid who are not politically active, they got involved in this, right? They started speaking about the Uyghur issue. Why are they speaking about the issue? Because even if you look at the Uyghur activists, some of the ones who are quite prominent. You will never ever find them even using language which is can be taken in any way to be violent. In fact, some of the Uyghur activists, like I believe his name is Ilham Toti, right? He doesn't even call for a separate state of East Turkestan. He actually says within Xinjiang, we need to have a dialogue, and can you guys stop oppressing us? He's not even calling for separatism, yet he's been given 25 years or God knows how long. So what it is they've come to realize, the Chinese Communist Party has come to realize, and has told its propagandists and its shills online, the only way to get the Western world to stop backing the Uyghur cause, because the Uyghur cause is going to remain a Muslim cause whether the West supports it or not, is by getting the Uyghurs linked to some form of militant activity, some form of violence. Then the Western world will say, we don't want anything to do with these terrorists. And then even the other Muslims, like you mentioned, the politically inactive Muslims will be like, do we really want to talk about this issue? Because these guys are terrorists. So everybody needs to be aware that this is a very toxic propaganda tool that they have. And we need to be on our guards that they're going to try and take anything we say. I've even stopped saying some things like, you normally say fight racism, right? Even if we say now fight CCP, they'll say, okay, that means jihad. Like literally anything you say. So this is why I'm being very careful as well online now, just to make sure they don't take things out of context.
You still said it though.
Did I?
The thing is like, for example, they did the same thing with, if you guys noticed, with Trump, like sort of the last couple of weeks, it was like fight for your freedom, fight like hell or something like this. And like, oh, this guy meant storm the Capitol, But I try and not censor myself unless I absolutely have to. And alhamdulillah, my track record shows for itself. Like besides my guests that I had the last week, I've had experts, I've had, National Tea Party, I've had politicians, I've had, so many people like from Human Rights Watch, from, legitimate organizations, authors on my channel. I've also been invited from Al Jazeera to BBC, all the way to A to Z, every media. So then people have to think, are those media, places or the guests that I have, are they now correlated with terrorism? So it doesn't make sense. You can do it with other people that you don't know, but alhamdulillah, we have a history, we have a track record. And so that can only go so far, that terrorist argument.
So we'll give Subboor and Arslan, give us some examples of some more examples for the brothers and sisters watching of how a proof of how our voice actually irks and annoys the Chinese Communist Party for them to do these elaborate schemes and expensive kind of propaganda campaigns. So because that's really important for us to realize that we have a lot of power to and our voice actually matters.
So it's kind of like this, right? If one night I decide to mug Salman, right? He's walking in an alleyway, and I pull out some sort of weapon, a gun or something, and I say to him, "Give me all your money," and he's like, "Meh," he just gives it over. All right, give me your driving license. He's just like, "Here you go." Then I say to him, like, "Give me that watch you're wearing." And then that watch may be something which was given to him by his late father, rahimullah, or something. He'll say, "I'm going to die. I'm going to give you my watch." Like by his reaction, you can tell what's important to him, right? So if you look at people like Arslan, who are a thorn in the side of the Chinese Communist Party, what happens when someone like him is speaking up about these issues? You get a very disproportionate reaction. So for example, if you take the story of Sister Zumrat Dawood and Sister Tursane Ziawudun, right? So these sisters, they came out of the camp, they spoke about the rape, they spoke about the killing, they spoke about the torture, they did these things. Fair enough. They're going around, they're talking to people. What does the Chinese government do? It actually holds a press conference, holds up their pictures, and says, "These women, they're actually like immoral, because one of them has STDs, and the other one, she had an affair. Now, obviously, those things are false. However, how on earth does it make any sense that the Chinese Communist Party government official is holding up pictures of these victims and basically saying, yeah, don't trust them because one's a fornicator or one's like, you can just say, okay, that's a completely irrational. If a normal human being did that, you would say that person is mentally not feeling right, because that's not an answer to the rape allegations. That's not an answer to this. Yet this is the official representative of the Chinese government, right? What does that go to show you? They literally want to discredit these women any way, shape, or form. And just after, the Uyghur tribunal is a good example. So that's why our voices count, right? So the Uyghur tribunal happened. The Chinese government was invited 4 times. They never accepted it. The funny thing is, they said this tribunal has no weight, no legality, no credibility. They didn't say this once. They said it again and again and again and again. You found it on their TV channels. You found it on their Twitter. So obviously the question to ask is, if you really think this tribunal is completely superfluous and it has no value, why can you not stop speaking about this? Why are you continuously speaking about it? And once it was over, they took the relatives of the people who testified, and they came in a TV conference and they said, no, these people, they don't know what they're talking about. So again, why are you reacting like that? If you really think this is nonsense, don't react like that. And what you find is that the Chinese government has employed 2 million online trolls. They're called Wumao. And now this is not something hidden. This is well documented, 2 million. Now what they do is that they continuously pester anybody who's saying something negative about the Chinese Communist Party. What's interesting is actually that there was a US-based company that was being pestered by these Wumao, and they realized 1 hour of the day they were actually not being attacked, and then there was a good 12 hours that they were not being attacked. The rest of the time they were being attacked by these Wumao. And what they realized is that time correlated with lunchtime in China, right? And the 12 hours correlated with the time off that people have between the time you finish your shift. This isn't made up stuff. This is honestly stuff which has been documented. 2 million people who are paid 50 cent for 50 cent, I think Chinese or whatever, for posting these comments.
Yeah. So basically, people think, what's the point of these Wumao? Well, the thing is, still to this day, Brother Subboor and Salman, whenever you talk about the Uyghur issue, I'm sure you get a couple of comments saying, is it really true? US game? They've done their job. Because you'll get 1 or 2 genuine comments. Oh, I feel so after, let's just say, if you guys remember the emoji videos of the Uyghurs that came out, they attacked that straight away because there's something to it after they were deleted. After we posted it, you get 2, 3, 4, 5 genuine comments. May Allah save our brothers and sisters. And then you get 50, 60 of like, it's fake, it's fake, it's fake. And then even when Muslims or genuine people want to go, it's like, they're too embarrassed. And so forget your normal person just turning on a camera and speaking. A lot of people are too afraid to just even tweet from an account that hasn't got their face and that hasn't got their real name, like genuine people. So, and unfortunately, their job is working so much that other governments now have their own Wumao as well. They followed it. They follow that trend.
I mean, a lot of Muslims now are prey to this kind of propaganda as well, just from because of their own agenda as well. Because maybe their home countries, the country that they came from, they have deals with, or are reliant on China so much that they it's illegal, pretty much to say anything bad about China. So a lot of this literature has come about in those countries to basically defend China. Abdul Hakim Idris, his book, he gave us a copy of his book when he was here, the Inspector General of the World Uyghur Congress. And he explains how China has been slowly colonizing the Muslim world and even other non-Muslim nations in Africa, for example, and getting them, into debt for infrastructure projects, roads and highways and stuff and trains. And now they're, basically following the British colonial model of the East India Trading Company and the East India Company and Western colonial models. So it's very hard for some people in an official capacity, or if not impossible, to speak out. And now, as a result, all of these, and mixed up with that was all of these, this propaganda that, if I'm someone who's a businessman, I'm doing business with someone in China, or rather doing business with someone in East Turkestan, for example, so-called Xinjiang province, I'm gonna feel guilty now if I, realize that it emerges that of the people in the factory making my toys or whatever I'm selling on eBay, that they're, slaves basically, forced labor. That makes me feel guilty. So I'm more inclined to, my nafs is more inclined to just ignore it and say, yeah, it's fake news and all that. But we're still held responsible and accountable for that. You need to know who your employers are, who your employees are, and who are the people that are doing that work. And we have to all be more conscientious when it comes to and mindful when it comes to when we're buying stuff as well. And this is part of the broader campaign, right? And as Subboor mentioned really well, that even if it can cause a 1% dip in their exports or something, the Muslims can do much more. But even if you just do a 1% dip, you don't have to completely crash their economy in order to make them change their policies. The people who have no values, no actual morality and so forth, they only understand when their bottom line into the negative. So just a few percent change can reduce their growth and make them think twice before doing these things. And at the end of the day, it's a game of economics. It's a game of profit and loss. They're spending this much money maintaining XYZ policy. If it becomes too costly for them, then they'll be forced to just do something else. So as part of this broader campaign, so just if any brothers and sisters are tuning in, we're talking about the importance of showing up, standing for the Uyghurs for the Stand for Uyghurs campaign, standforuyghurs.com. Check out the information there. The launch of this campaign is a demonstration of solidarity outside the Chinese embassy, demonstration of solidarity for our Uyghur brothers and sisters, and the other minorities who are being who have suffered 100 years of terror, the Kazakhs, and other even non-Muslim groups, for example. 100-year anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party on the 1st of July, 5 to 8 p.m. We're going to have many prominent speakers from the Muslim community. Some of them are mentioned in the poster, for example, so Iqbal Sacranie, Sheikh Haitham al-Haddad, Sheikh Zahir Mahmood, Dr. Anas Altikriti, Moazzam Begg, and many others, Imam Shakil Begg, Dili Hussain from 5 Pillars. So we've got lots of organizations on board, alhamdulillah. I was just looking at the latest list. I think it's about 30 odd, maybe 40 organizations, national Muslim mainstream organizations, alhamdulillah. We've got the media organizations, we've got Islam Channel, Iman Channel, 5 Pillars, Dawam, Islam Trinity, obviously, Ilm Feed on board. We've got the big masajid, the major masjids in the major regions of the UK. Inshallah, we got the Bradford senior ulama as well, from Bradford all the way down to through Birmingham. We've got Green Lane Masjid and the surrounding masajid. We've got As-Sufa Institute in Birmingham as well. With Sheikh Zahir Mahmood. We've got London. We've got many masajid here in London. We've got ELM, East London Mosque and London Muslim Centre, for example, on board. Khutbahs were given all around the country, even as far as I think Canada. They Sheikh Abdul Hakim Quick, somebody sent a thing on the WhatsApp group just now. Sheikh Abdul Hakim Quick was speaking about the Uyghurs as well in his khutbah yesterday, I believe. So the momentum is there. We need to actually turn out now, right, and show solidarity, physical solidarity with our Uyghur brothers and sisters. Subboor, give us some more advice while I take a sip of my coffee. I've been speaking too long.
Yeah, in terms of what we are planning on doing, this is obviously a start of a much broader project, inshallah. So something that we've been discussing, myself and Salman, is a particular focus on boycott, sanctions, and disinvestment from China. It's actually not. I mean, if you think about it, some of the best products are boycotted in the world because of where they come from. So people will say, I'm not going to buy that because that's from a particular place where this or this happens. So the thing about Chinese products is that it's quite easy to get replacements. It's only a matter that it's not going to be as cheap as China. I mean, let's be, I mean, something has to give, right? If other places were cheaper, people wouldn't be getting it from China. However, there is a growing manufacturing base in Malaysia and Africa as well. So why not start spreading the love, buying African goods, buying goods from Malaysia, buying goods from Muslim and non-Muslim countries which are, friendly to Muslims. So it's so important that we break down everything that we're doing into monetary damage against the Chinese Communist Party, right? Everything. So even this demonstration, right, of what we are planning on doing. What is the point of getting all these speakers and they're speaking about this issue? Like, how is this going to lead to tangible results? Well, firstly, a lot of British Muslims don't know about the Uyghur issue, and they don't know how old this issue is. Say some of them may have fallen prey to some of the counter propaganda, like the standard propaganda that you get is the West has a what's it called, a agenda against China, and therefore this topic they're raising up. Okay, well, let's just assume that, and I don't believe this is true, but let's just assume that the politicians or other people that are standing up for this particular issue, they fall into this category. I don't believe that, and I have my reasons for that. But let's just say that this argument's true. That in no way invalidates the fact that there's a genocide going on, or the fact that there is oppression that goes back way beyond, the last 20, 30 years, goes back all the way to the Manchu Empire. We're talking about a long time ago. So even if you look at the history of the Manchu Empire, you find out that, they were policies they put in place. There were rapes taking place. There's all this stuff that was still happening under that occupation. And then obviously you had the communists taking over later on.
So boy, your field is philosophy of science, right? You talk about, the epistemology and the roots to knowledge and sound knowledge and testimony and all that. It's probably equally absurd to believe, if you believe that this genocide and the transmission from so many men and women across the world, part of the Uyghur diaspora, all saying the same thing. If you believe that is, they all gathered on the same conspiracy, or all happened to miraculously make the same error, then that's as absurd almost as denying China itself even exists. We always use the example of, how do you know China exists? You've never been there, because of so many people at so many points in your life, so many different pieces of information, so many pieces of evidence and testimony pointing to one fact, that there's some place called China. So if you're, it's almost absurd as denying China itself even exists, and it's just some fairy tale land, to say that all of these people from so many different countries, 70 odd countries, organizations that are represented, for example, in the World Uyghur Congress, 70 plus organizations around dozens of countries, they're all saying the same thing, that every matter, every element of their lives, is controlled. That they're even the Chinese, the academics, for example, that were giving testimony, they were using Chinese policy documents themselves that are public, speeches from Chinese politicians and officials talking about these things, in terms of forced sterilization, in terms of so-called family planning and this type of stuff. So the control and the grip of the Chinese Communist Party on the everyday actions of the lives of the Uyghurs is something known by mass transmission, right? Known by tawatur. Yeah, that denying that is almost as absurd as denying the reality that China exists in the first place, just because you haven't seen it.
Absolutely. And the thing that keeps getting raised is, the West has a agenda, therefore they're doing this. The fact is that if you look at, say, something like the Iraq War, right? You had Western politicians who resigned. You had Western politicians who were right at the forefront of the anti-war campaign. So what you have to remember is that they are going to be pro and anti-China politicians in the Western world. So you actually, in some parts of the West, you get really some cringy people who are quite pro-China, and they try and defend China to death, and they try and overlook these things. However, what we have to do is we have to say, okay, if you're going to say the West has an agenda, then China also has an agenda, and the Chinese agenda, which actually goes back to the emperors before, obviously, the Chinese Communist Party, was to actually populate Xinjiang with Han people. That was actually their dream. And only in the 20th century did the Chinese Communist Party actually manage to do that. So if you just want to say agendas, well, there's agendas which are clear on the Chinese Communist Party side. The other thing to keep in mind, like, for example, there's somebody online here right now, Mustafa C, and he's I hope you don't mind me saying this, brother. So he's saying the standard narrative, right? Remember, China supports Pakistan and raises the atrocities committed by Indian troops in Kashmir. Fact is, Yanks can't hack Chinese power growing rapidly. Subboor, that's lame reasoning. If Western politicians protested the Iraq war, like, it's the standard thing, which is, well, China has supported, say, Pakistan in its policies in, for example, the Indian oppression that's basically taking place. China has supported Pakistan there. Now, this is where we have to be very honest and direct. Yes, that's true. China has done very good things to try and raise certain issues like the Kashmir issue, and actually helped Pakistan. And we're not saying anybody is categorically evil, that you cannot work with them and you have to completely break off all your relationships. There's good and bad in each. But what we're basically saying is this, that you can't just say, okay, so they've done this good thing, therefore if they're doing something bad, we're just going to ignore it, right? Like, for example, America, through its various aid agencies and the aid they give, they have done some projects in Africa and fed the poor and this and that. Now, does that mean I can't oppose the Iraq war because they did something good? So look, what's very important is this. We as Muslims, we have to be very broad in our thinking. The fact is, it's not about us as Muslims aligning ourselves with the West or aligning ourselves with China. It's to do with something very, very simple. Wherever, and Sheikh Haitham says this, and this is something very important, wherever there is oppression, you have to speak up. Wherever there is oppression, you have to speak up, right? So it's not that we selectively say, okay, there's oppression in this place, so we're going to speak up about this, but we're not going to speak about the other thing. For example, in Indian occupied Kashmir, there are millions of Pakistanis, and they are Pakistanis, they're Kashmiri Pakistanis, who are under massive oppression, and they've been since for decades, but especially since the new right-wing government came to power. And what we also have to realize is that, these governments, like say the Indian government, who they seem like they are speaking up for the Uyghurs, and they're saying these things, and you find this on Indian news outlets as well. They don't care at all about Muslims. If they could, they would do the same oppression which is happening in East Turkestan, in Xinjiang. The same oppression would be happening in India if it wasn't for the decent people in India, like, well, they have a big Muslim population as well. The decent people in India, and there's free press who'd be basically not putting up for it. They do the same thing. So Muslims are not dumb. We can see, okay, if they're supporting the Uyghurs, they have an agenda. Okay, if the West is, doing something, there may be some people who have an agenda. Okay, China has an agenda. We don't really get reeled in by these things. What we do get reeled in is this. There is massive oppression happening, massive oppression happening. And that massive oppression is not going to be ignored by us simply because, say, China's helping Pakistan when it comes to the Kashmir issue. And remember, China is very pro-Palestine, right? They recognize, and we have to give credit where it's due, they recognize Jerusalem being the capital of Palestine. They believe in they've condemned Israel. So what we're saying is, look, we're not going to throw out the baby with the bathwater and say, okay, China is categorically evil, or America is categorically evil, or they're categorically evil. We're going to say we want to have a relationship as Muslims with everybody, except we're not going to partially accept oppression and say, okay, so we're going to speak up about Kashmir and leave the Uyghurs, or we're going to speak up about the Palestinians and the Uyghurs and leave the Kashmiris. No, we as Muslims are going to speak up about every single type of oppression. And for us, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant whatever monetary gain we can get. Because let's be honest, guys, and this is very important to understand. Hypothetically, say in 10, 15 years' time, most of the Western governments, they have a good relationship with China. They've put aside their beef, right? And they are going back to having good relationships with China. We would still speak about the Uyghur issue, right? So also, this is also something recently I've been looking into, that brother, Ilham Tohti, the academic, right? I didn't really know much about him, and maybe Arslan can expand on this. What's very interesting is that he never ever called for separatism away from China, which distinguishes him from most other activists, right? And all he was simply saying is, can you treat us like human beings? Can you basically give us rights? And he was not calling for violence. He wasn't calling for separatism. And interestingly enough, everything he was trying to do, he was trying to do within the Chinese law. So even the laws of the autonomous region, if even those laws are applied, that would mean the Uyghurs could pray, could fast, could do basic things. And I heard this from one Uyghur, which was very interesting. And what he said is that the chances for reconciliation with China is basically, I'm paraphrasing what he said, between the Uyghurs and the Han Chinese, it's the Han Chinese government which is basically destroying those things. Because if we go back, and there's this other academic who spoke about this, that the Uyghurs are being oppressed to the point that they all are being pushed towards that direction of, we don't want the Chinese rule anymore, right? So they're being pushed in that direction. It's not like they are, like, even if we go back to 2004, 2005, yes, you have friction and this and that, but the level of oppression that they're doing is actually making the situation far worse. So even if, and this we can say to the Chinese Communist Party officials who aren't as dumb as the other ones who are just doing this, we can say to them, if you really want a country which is not destabilized, then what you need to understand is doing this only makes situations worse, number one. Number two, you are not even a superpower yet. America's a superpower. The Britain was a superpower before then. The Ottomans were a superpower before then. China's not even a superpower, but you've already picked a fight with the Islamic world with what you've done. So you've already got off on the wrong foot with the entire Islamic world. It doesn't matter how much money you try and throw at us, right? We're never going to throw away our principles, right? So what we need to do is we need to get them to understand that no matter what opportunities or what types of things you're going to throw at us, we will not be dissuaded, because our ultimate allegiance is with Allah and His Messenger, and it's not with anything else, right? So therefore, we're not affected by these things.
You know, it's important whenever someone talks about this country's agenda or that country's agenda, it's almost as though we're putting ourselves off the table, completely. What's your agenda as a Muslim? Why don't you have your own agenda? Yeah, your agenda is you have certain prerequisites and certain dictates that you have to live by. When you say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, you have a certain agenda now. Yeah, you can't just ignore like fully oppression that's taking place. You have rights. Your brothers and sisters have rights over you. That's part of your agenda. So when we talk about this country's agenda, that superpower's agenda, it's almost as though we're defeated mentally and we've become victims and we're just off the chessboard and completely. You're not even a pawn anymore. You're not even on the chessboard, right? But you have to have your own identity, your own agenda, firstly, right? And Muslims are probably the biggest coherent group with a common language, common culture, common obviously values and so forth in the world, right? If we actually wake up and assume our agenda, regardless of what we're doing, we have certain common things that all Muslims agree with, and it happens to be for the maslahah of the wider human species as well, right? The preservation of life, preservation of intellect, wealth, lineage, and so forth, and the preservation of itself, i.e., Islam as a deen, as a way of life. This is in the benefit of all creatures, right? So we have to assert our own agenda as well, and let others come or engage or not engage with us on our own platform, through our own discourse and narrative as well. That's the first thing when it comes to these people saying that. Secondly, we have to realize that what's happening, and you're completely right in terms of what you're saying. The trajectory completely changed in the recent years for the Uyghur brothers and sisters, right? It went from kind of and they were mentioning this, the expert witnesses, the academics were mentioning this in the tribunal as well, that the policies of the Chinese Communist Party went from pushing assimilationism via, making laws, forbidding certain things, to a proactive prevention of people even having the free will to break those laws anymore, right? So they went from a system where you're punished for having more than 2 kids to a system where, okay, your womb will be removed, right? Or you will be fitted with a device, forced, sterilization and these types of things. So they went to an active rather than, and they actually use the word prevent, right? Which says a lot, okay, in terms of the discourse and the logics of pre-crime. They said they went to a pre-crime space in the last 2-3 years, which is where this whole the genocide has increased and accelerated. Yeah. Now, this is an experiment the whole world is watching. Okay, this is an experiment the whole world is looking at. We've seen assimilationism as a mainstream, growing mainstream phenomenon. Boris Johnson himself, he said, "I'm an assimilationist," right? In the last few elections, that's what his mood is, and his sentiments about, for example, Muslims. You see growing neocon, Cold War against Islam kind of rhetoric and discourse, that they want Muslims to abandon their Muslimness and become more like basically the compliant white population, basically. So brown faces, but everything else about you is just like the non-Muslim kind of Christian Western taste and so forth in your whatever. When it comes to liberalism with the capital L, when it comes to everything, even when it comes to LGBT ideology, for example, all of these things are kind of pushed to make Muslims assimilate into the dominant kind of discourse and culture on most things. Now, China has gone from a soft assimilationist approach to a hard one, right? And if we don't make a noise about this, then all the other Muslim areas, all the other regimes are enforcing soft assimilationism in Europe, growing kind of trends as well of populism in America and the UK. Those people, think tanks and people that are, pushing policy, they're looking at what's happening, right? They're taking notes. It's like an experiment that will be can be exposed and exported to the rest of the world to create compliant Muslim populations, and and the compliant Muslim is a Muslim who has no relics of the deen at all. Maybe they have a Muslim name, but nothing else about them is Muslim. And that's one of the reasons why we have to be very careful and make a noise about this and show resistance, so people don't try this experiment. Because the thing, unfortunately, what's happening to the discourse that is underlying, and the logics that are underlying the oppression of the Uyghurs, is now the same discourse that was experimented on us here, UK Muslims, for example, with Prevent, with CVE, the whole discourse of problematizing Muslimness under the terminology of and the logics of terrorism and counterterrorism. That has been wholesale copied and pasted throughout the world. And Middle Eastern regimes are locking up people up. Egypt is famously locking up and sentencing people to death. Commensurate with your country's or your regime's level of authoritarianism and despotism, that's affecting people to that degree, to that level, right? So if we don't, because we were late, one of the reasons because we were late to the party of speaking out against this problematizing Muslimness, this logic spreading, is spread so far and wide, and it continues to be. A few months ago we reported Psalm 23, for example, British prevent wallahs, basically prevent officers exporting and training foreign countries that are involved in these crazy abuses of Muslims and minorities under the banner of counterterrorism. They're providing training, providing this vocabulary. So it's something we have to call out and stand firm and united against, to show that we're not going to just lie down and let this spread. This type of behavior is not acceptable.
Yeah, there's an important comment here, and this is the feeling, or this was the feeling of a lot of Uyghurs many years ago. Now, you guys from experience, as you mentioned, sort of late to the show, probably in the past 1 or 2 years, you've sort of heard about it. Maybe you heard about it 10 or so years ago, but it was just like, praying is banned, like one newspaper article, and then you won't hear about it again. And so for many, many years, this concept of ummah, Uyghurs didn't feel part of the ummah. Now with a little bit of knowledge that we have of Islam, obviously you're not gonna stop being proud about being a Muslim or following Islam because the ummah abandoned you. But for a lot of Uyghurs, this is how they felt. They wouldn't even, to an extent, like, especially once they got out of East Turkestan, they wouldn't even call themselves Muslim. I'm a Uyghur, and that's it. And I know Uyghurs that don't even go to Jummah prayer because they asked the Imam, "Can you talk about the Uyghurs?" And they refused. We don't talk about political, and they wouldn't. They left the Jummah prayer, and they pray at home for it. Like it's gotten to that extent. And this comment is so great because now we are feeling, and it's on you guys, because obviously the Muslim world. When I mean Muslim world, I'm talking about governments, Muslim majority with populations, like 50 odd governments out there. And thank God, even though they're not doing anything, at least on a ground level, like layman Muslims or like people in Dawah and Shuyukh in the West, at least. So that feeling of solidarity, that feeling of being part of the Ummah has come back, because for years, Uyghurs felt themselves to be not part of the Ummah. We were left. And unfortunately, a lot of Uyghurs, not a lot, some Uyghurs that I've personally spoken to have actually left Islam because of this. They go like, how can Islam be true if we're not part of the Ummah? Like I say, La ilaha illallah, that means Islam must not, like, obviously that's wrong. But, for someone who was brought up in a society where Islam is, restricted. And once they left East Turkestan, they thought, I'll find, I'll be able to live my Islam. And when they realized, oh, the Muslim world has actually abandoned us, they've left Islam altogether. So and there was a really good comment saying, I've got a Chinese friend and people seem to practice their religion, freely. No, all religions, whether it be Islam, Christianity, Judaism, the sort of accepted religions of the world, are practiced with Chinese characteristics, meaning you've got pictures of Xi Jinping in the church, in the mosque. But there's an extra level of restrictions in East Turkestan. So just because you see people being practiced freely, and what's crazy is you will see images of the Chinese media interviewing imams and like Muslims saying we're all good, but how come we never get to see the BBC, the CNN, Vice, or anyone else go and interview those Uyghurs? We recently saw from the Telegraph the Chinese government saying, come and see Xinjiang for yourself. And what happened when reporters go in there? They're blocked, they're followed, they're spied on. If they've got nothing to hide, then let everybody in, which we always say. It's like, for example, if a murder is committed, right, and like a scream comes out in this house, yeah, and the neighbor calls the police, and the police come knocking on the door, right, and they have probable cause to check my home. And I go, guys, there's nothing going on here. Can you just go away? I'm trying to sleep. You think the police are going to just walk away? And that's what's happening. That's exactly what's happening. And where the world isn't putting enough pressure like we do with countries like Iran, where they go, we don't have nuclear weapons. It's not enough for Iran to say we don't have nuclear weapons. They go, look, we're going to put cameras in where we use our uranium and all that. And then therefore they know that if they don't do that, if they don't open their doors, they're going to be sanctioned. That's not what we're doing with China. We're not sanctioning them enough. We're not punishing them enough. And so they're getting away with everything. And they make these poor, shoddy videos of happy Uyghurs and dancing. And they do it to an extent, like they are literally mocking the world.
That's a very, very good insight you gave there. And I wanted to talk about, you spoke about a lack of support for the Uyghurs. So I was thinking about, the recent interview of Imran Khan. I'm not sure if you guys saw it. I'm sure you did, right? So I just wanted to, and I think this is very, very important. And this is, where Sheikh Haitham speaks a lot about why Muslims should study politics and they should study sociology and, these types of topics, right? So I was thinking of something. So obviously during the interview, I think everyone pretty much, was not happy with the interview. But there's a few things I was thinking about and I wanted to discuss them with you. Salman, you're Pakistani, Arslan, you're Uyghur, so I'm Pakistani as well. So I thought I'd throw it out there. So what's interesting is this. You see, when I saw that interview of Imran Khan and then he's being asked about the Uyghur issue, and then he's not speaking about it, I actually felt sorry for him. And the reason why I felt sorry for him is because I've been following him for a very, very long time. And since I think Zia-ul Haq, since the 1980s, I think he's the best leader that Pakistan has had. And I genuinely believe he cares about Islamophobia. And he's not there for the money. He's not there for this. He's not there for that. However, there's a particular calculation that is done in Pakistan. And that calculation is the reason why people don't speak up, right? And I had a sort of solution to that, which I wanted to discuss with you guys. So what it is this. A country like Pakistan, which has a huge influence in the Muslim world, it's going to be the largest Muslim country on earth in a few years' time. It's going to be Indonesia, right? And it's a nuclear power, and it's a powerhouse of Islam, and it's supported the Algerians, it's supported the Bosnians, the Afghans, the Syrians. Everybody has been supported from the Pakistani side, right? So what it is from their perspective, from Pakistan's perspective now, and now I'm putting on a nationalistic hat, not a hat I believe in, but a nationalistic hat, because you have to be able to understand where somebody's coming from. You see, from the very beginning of Pakistan, India has been continuously trying to derail Pakistan. It's been sending these people in with weapons and, in various different areas. Yeah. So basically, India has been trying to destabilize Pakistan. And even like 2 years ago, they sent their jets. So when it comes to Balochistan, when it comes to KPK, when it comes to Sindh, when it comes to Punjab, when it comes to every single province of Pakistan, the Indian intelligence agency, RAW, has been spreading terrorism in Pakistan for decades, right? And sometimes they will even use Muslims to fight the state, and they will fund them, and they'll do these types of things, right? So from the national security point of view, Indian have infiltrated Pakistan and started all these terrorism activities all across the country and tried to break up the country. They've occupied millions of lives of Pakistanis, Kashmiri Pakistanis. And so everything that Pakistan does, it does from the lens of the Indian threat. Everything. Literally nothing happens there except you think of it from the Indian perspective. And it's not I wouldn't say it's an inflated threat. I would actually say it is exactly what people think it is, that India is out there to destroy Pakistan. So the way that they see it is China gives Pakistan weapons, China gives Pakistan a voice at the UN, China supports Pakistan on the Kashmir issue, China helps Pakistan economically, and economic is linked to supporting the country in terms of its defense. So what's going to happen is the Pakistani state will never ever support East Turkestan as an independent country, and it will never want to do something to upset China, right? Because it depends on China to stop India. So what we could do as an answer, think amongst ourselves, is look, there is a simple answer, and the simple answer is this. Fair enough, don't call for East Turkestan as an independent state. But understand, if you want to speak about Islamophobia in the West, and you want to speak about Islamophobia in Kashmir, in India, and all over the place, then when you leave out one part of the Ummah and you speak up about everything, including Palestine, then your entire narrative is incoherent. Which is what I was really sad about in that interview, is the reporter got away with making Imran Khan look really bad. Because what he basically said is, you're talking about Islamophobia in the West, you're talking about this, you're talking about that, but what about here, the Uyghurs, on your doorstep? And there was no answer. So what people can basically do there, the people who have, strategic thinking and this type of thing, what they can do is this. They can simply say, we'll never support any militant activity against China or any separatism or any independence movement for East Turkestan. But what they simply can do is give private advice to the Chinese, because publicly the Chinese are narcissistic and they're not going to accept any public advice. Privately advise them and say to them, your actions here are angering the entire Muslim world, right? Your actions here are angering the entire Muslim world. Our own narrative as Pakistan as standing up for Islamophobia across the world is being undermined as well. And because the way that they're thinking from their perspective is, we need to latch on to China to counteract India. Well, if you, and of course it's needed India is the biggest obstacle Pakistan has to its survival, then what they can say to them is, well, if you really want to be a great superpower and you really want to excel in the world, then we can promise you something. If you have the Muslims on your side, is better than having Muslims against you. And also the other thing that they can do is, and we can all do this as well, just tell the Chinese state directly, your propaganda is so poor and pathetic, it's not fooling anybody. It's literally not fooling anybody. It's like, I saw this video of a serial killer who was mentally ill. He killed somebody. After killing them, he covered up that person in a few leaves, and the dead body's there, and he hitchhiked to go somewhere, right? So the fact is, the dead body is there, everybody can see the dead body, and nobody is going to pretend like that didn't happen. So the fact is, you're angering, the Chinese Communist Party is angering the entire Muslim world by doing what it's doing. So it should learn from the mistakes that other people made in the past, like the Soviet Union, like the Iraq War, and other things that actually took place, like what's happening in Palestine. And we can actually say to them, look, it's in your favor. It's in your favor to listen to people like Ilham Tohti, right? Who is openly talking about a peaceful coexistence, not even separatism. So, I mean, that's my take on it. And I definitely, in terms of that interview, I'm a supporter of Imran Khan on every issue except the Uyghurs, of course.
Isn't that what Imran Khan claims he's doing anyway? Like advising him in private and all that kind of stuff?
We don't know. We don't know what those private conversations are. But what I'm trying to do is, even for a Pakistani audience, because what I do is I get messages from people from Pakistan who say, what should we do about the Uyghurs? I myself say that, look, if you do something in Pakistan, then you can fall into the trap of supporting India. So you don't want to do anything like that. However, strategically, we should be able to articulate that there is a way of supporting the Uyghurs as Pakistanis, supporting them, morally supporting them, not in any physical way, morally supporting them, but at the same time having a relationship. Because what I've come to realize, and I think speaking to some of the strategic thinkers here in London has made me realize this, the Western support for the Uyghur issue may be very time bound. It may be that they don't support it in the future. And it may be that our only outlet is going to be potentially not even calling for independence, but actually calling for the better treatment of the Muslims in East Turkestan or Xinjiang. So what this particular strategic thinker, I had this long discussion with him, he really opened up my eyes. He said, look, we don't know where the world is going in the next couple of decades. Because remember, politics, people can change sides. People can do that. Our unchangeable aim is, can you please treat the Uyghurs like human beings, allow them to pray, allow them to fast, allow them to do this, allow them to do that. And if anything, you are fueling the independence movement by what you're doing. Because some Uyghurs are not even calling for that, but now they're going to call for that because of what's been happening to them.
Yeah.
So that's my take on the Imran Khan interview.
The thing about that, the impression I get about Pakistan from different people is that it's already in a position of subservience and it's practically a vassal, heading to be a vassal state of China.
I don't.
I mean, in terms of the amount of reliance it has, right, on China for industry, for debt relief from the IMF, for all these types of things. I mean, Abdul Hakim in his book, he wrote, if Pakistan's not careful, it would be the next East Turkestan itself. Yeah. Because it has, remember, that route to the sea. The Gwadar port, for example, and obviously billions of dollars of investment and so forth. So they're going to protect their route to the sea. And some people have been saying, like Han Chinese in Pakistan that are coming for whatever reason, they're allowed to do anything they want.
Yeah,
they can go up and slap a policeman if they wanted, and nothing would happen to them.
Stand on top of a police car.
Yeah. So that's I don't envy Imran Khan. I'm not like a hater or anything from just what I know about him. It seems to be that he's talking the right talk. But again, this issue has put him into a pickle as well. But I suppose there's one thing of not doing enough, right? But it's a completely different kettle of fish for those Muslims to come out and actively support China, go out of their way to praise China and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's
you
just
can do one. Yeah. You can do one and not the other. You can, if you're unable to. Remember, the Prophet said, if you're unable to speak out again, if you're unable to change something with your tongue, then change it with your heart. Yeah, you can still. That's the weakest level for a mu'min. You don't have to speak out against a munkar if you credibly believe it's going to lead to a bigger munkar. Yeah, that's part of our own agenda, our own usul and principles. But that's completely different from going out of your way and praising them and saying, "Oh, look, you're doing a great job," and that kind of stuff.
And maybe Arslan can tell me the number, but from my understanding, pretty much the whole Islamic world came together and said what China doing is good at the UN.
Pretty much, yeah. And like, for example, if we go back to Imran Khan, like, love him or hate him, like people like Imran Khan or Erdogan, right? They have major influence. So unless they say that there is, unfortunately, unless they say that there is actual genocide, a lot of because the Muslim world worships these two people and other leaders who make it out like they are some sort of khilafah. Millions of people follow these guys, and we say it's because of their statements that no matter what we do in the West, obviously we still do what we do, but we're coming from a place of, again, that narrative, or the US has an agenda, Fulan has an agenda, this has an agenda, because they're not saying it. Then there's always going to be some sort of doubt. But what was, and here, as you mentioned before, Salman, like he has said, we talk about this behind closed doors many times. You can say we talk about this behind closed doors, but at the same time, in front of the camera, you don't even say, you know what, we're worried about them. Like, not even that. It's just like, you know what, the news that's coming out, we don't even know if it's true. It's at that level. It's like, you know what, we are concerned. You know, we had heard of these reports. We're worried. We're concerned.
Complete disaster, to be honest.
But it's just like, no, it's like, it's not possible. It's just like, for example, you know how China now goes, it's not possible that COVID came from China. It's come from an asteroid. No. It's possible. There's a possible. You know what I mean? So that's what worries us. Like you don't even give it a chance.
Yeah, and you know what's very interesting about this, and what you said about credibility, like the Muslim world, you know, they follow Erdogan and Imran Khan and you know, certain other leaders that they see as being more Islamic. And Imran Khan definitely came on that platform, and so did Erdogan, that they're things. So if people politically just follow them blindly, right? If they deny it, or if they are silent about it, it loses a lot of credibility. And something that I found strange, and you know, again, just like with Imran Khan, he comes on this popular Islamic narrative, so does Erdogan, right? Erdogan actually was the first Muslim leader to call out the genocide in 2008. He actually called it a genocide. And what's really powerful is Abdul Hakim Idris. He went the other day to Turkey. And I don't know if you saw Arslan online, but he actually met the former Turkish Prime Minister.
You mean Ahmed Davutoğlu?
Yeah. What's his name? Ahmad?
Ahmed Davutoğlu.
Ahmad Davutoğlu, right? And he actually held up his book. And I was like, how on earth is this making any sense when that guy is so close to Erdogan? They go back years.
Actually, a bit of context here. Ahmed Davutoğlu is from another political party now. He runs what they call the Future Party. So his ties with Erdogan are cut at the moment, and he has been talking and supporting the Uyghurs. And he was the one that leaked the information about that they had heard reports, unofficial reports, of 50,000 Uyghurs are on the verge of being deported back to China. And we've got that video translated on Talkies Turkestan. So that tie of Ahmed Davutoğlu being chummy with Erdogan, that's finished. That's why it's different now.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Political ties. As you said, the politics have changed recently. Yeah.
But it's amazing because what it goes to show is that, and I knew this. I went to Turkey with you, and you know, we went to Zenit Bureau, and you know, we could see the Uyghurs there. It's not really plausible that the large Turkish population is going to let go of the Uyghur issue. It's too far embedded within the Turkish psyche. The Uyghur flag is everywhere. The protesters everywhere. It's on TV channels. Even that secular party that was set up with the Kaye tribe, that woman, right? Even she's speaking about the Uyghur issue. So you see, the Uyghur issue in Turkey, it kind of feels like it's the cat's out of the bag, and you can't put it back in. It's just gone. So I mean, I think maybe
that's actually beneficial for Erdogan and these people, and even Imran Khan, to show that look, there's a rising thing. It's a bargaining chip for them, and one of the things is that to allow and you know, undercover almost, or let kind of the activism spread from the grassroots, even if you're unable to. So you might be unable to do something because you can argue your hands are tied, or you know, you're in a subservient position, negotiating on more pressing issues for, you know, oppression of a large number of people, for example. But you can allow and facilitate others to say what you're unable to say. You know, at least that should be the bare minimum that's going on.
Yeah, and this is where I wanted to say that, you know, with Pakistan, or the claims that it's a Chinese colony or something like this. What I wanted to say about this, right, is firstly, the vast majority of the Pakistan economy is informal. right? It's not linked to any particular infrastructure project or whatever. Now, we don't fundamentally, as a country, have an issue with having infrastructure projects run by China. Having Gwadar Port and all these things actually economically are very good for the country, and that can actually make Pakistan what it really needs to be, which is a manufacturing hub to defend itself from India. So those things are like, that's not a problem. That's fine. But the issue really comes in, like you said, when these things are denied, that what's happening to the Uyghurs, like this is being denied. And then what starts to happen is that you start to lose credibility. And remember, Imran Khan, the Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir, and Erdogan, these three were going to change the world. They're going to do this thing about this Islamophobia TV and this and that. In many ways, amongst the three of them, and they all, this is very interesting, by the way, they all actually think very similarly. However, Mahathir is the one who came in and he basically threw out these, Chinese infrastructure projects because he thought they were traps, and he actually spoke up, and he's actually very good like that. So the fact is, I don't think the situation is so dire that it's like anything like a colony. I don't think it is at all. The other thing to keep in mind is that every state needs some story, some narrative to exist, right? So for example, when you look at Egypt, right, Egypt exists even without Islam. You can have the Egyptian state. Why? Because they're Egyptian, they go back thousands of years. The only credibility Pakistan has is being an Islamic nation. So we have Pashtuns, we have Balochi, we have Punjabis, we have Sinds, we have these people. And the only reason that they are together is Islam. That's it. Which is why what you find is, when you find people who are separatists in Pakistan, they're normally very, very secular. Because anybody who has an Islamic mindset, and even not even like a really high Islamic mindset, even a mediocre Islamic mindset, they will be completely against breaking up the country or separatism of any sort, because they will see, look, we are an Islamic nation. This is why we're together. And Pakistan has always prided itself. And if you watch on Al Jazeera, there was an interview between Mehdi Hassan and this general called something Durrani, Asad Durrani, I think his name was. I'm not sure if you guys have seen it. It's a very popular interview. So it's an interview where Mehdi Hassan is trying to speak to him about Pakistan and this and that. And the Uyghur issue wasn't big back then, so Mehdi Hassan didn't bring it up. But he met, and he's from the military establishment, and he says this, look, Islam for Pakistan is not just an idea, like it's the very reason why we exist, which is why we speak about the Bosnians and the others. So the thing is, it is so important that when you have a narrative, when you have a story, that it's actually complete, is actually whole, right? So when we have a situation where we have Muslims on our borders, the Uyghur Muslims on our borders, being sterilized, raped, thrown into concentration camps, even the Uyghur sisters who've married Pakistani men, and then their wives have come over to Pakistan, and then their wives have disappeared. Like, are we supposed to be silent on this? But we're going to speak about Bosnia, we're going to speak about Algeria. I mean, if you go back into the history, you'll find, and I spoke a few years ago to one of these Pakistani military officers who was involved in the Algerian uprising, that he was supporting the Algerian against the French. And you find that Pakistani pilots were flying Syrian planes and downing Israeli jets. So you find all over the Muslim world, they will say, we are here for you. But the very people on our borders, we're going to be like, okay, we are just going to remain completely silent on this. That is such a dangerous incoherence that it just makes you look incredibly dumb. I would hate to be a Pakistani politician and that journalist comes up to me and starts asking about the Uyghur issue, because your entire narrative falls apart. The entire reasoning behind your country, the entire narrative that we're Muslims and this and that and all this type of stuff, everything falls apart, right?
Yeah.
Even if
you would only not do that. You would only let that happen if your friend and ally is not actually an equal friend, but somebody who is in a position of superiority over you, where you don't, they have the bargaining chips over you, basically. And that's a dangerous position. It's more of, it's not an equal relationship, therefore it's a hegemonic relationship, or it's on its way to becoming a hegemonic relationship.
Yeah. So
where
you know,
you're afraid to speak out and condemn this thing. Not I'm talking about like a, you know, a temporary, you know, PR speak for a particular reason, for a particular temporary reason. No, if you're actively saying no, it's probably not happening, or following the, you know, the script that you're allowed to be allowed to say, that's where it gets really murky, you know.
So
And,
this is where CJ Wellerman, who you know we all know of, he said something very interesting. When everybody was attacking Imran Khan after that interview, and I remained silent because I was like, it's nuanced. It's not. I mean, he's obviously, the Uyghurs not defending them that's just ridiculous, right? However, there's a whole mechanism behind this I want to explain. But CJ Wellerman said something very interesting, right? He said, if you look closely at the situation, and he tweeted this, right? It's basically America and the European Union, in essence, which is putting Pakistan in that position. So, for example, they have this list, is called the FATF list of some sort, right? And it's to do with terrorism fundraising, funding, or whatever. And what they keep doing is they keep putting Pakistan on that list, and then Pakistan can't get loans. And then continuously, what it's doing is it's running over, Saudi or here or there loans. And obviously, I'm not agreeing to the loans. I'm just describing what's going on. So in a way, you know, wouldn't it be nice if the European Union and if the Americans, and if they really want Pakistan to stop going to China for all these loans, if they could take Pakistan off those lists, if they could actually treat Pakistan, as you remember, we have to understand, and this is where politics comes in importantly, right? America used Pakistan as a battering ram against the Soviet Union. And 3 million, more than that, Afghan refugees came in. Pakistan spent a huge amount of money for the Afghans and against the Soviets. And all of this happened. And as soon as the Soviets lost, and there was massive amount of money that was needed to fix Afghanistan and to obviously financially support Pakistan for this, Americans just got lost, right? And then Pakistan had to pick up all those pieces. So we have to understand that geopolitically, maybe a part of the Uyghur issue is also going to be speaking to Western politicians and powers and people like that and saying, oh, you don't want Pakistan to be in China's pocket. Why the hell are you creating the conditions so they cannot turn to anybody for loans? They cannot do anything except go to China. And this is why, you know, obviously in Islam, interest is haram, right? Taking loans is frowned upon. And, you know, I believe it's Erdogan who got rid of his IMF loans, right? Being in loan to somebody is such a disgusting position to be in. They basically own you. Even in one-to-one, if someone owes you money, amongst the Sahaba, there's one Sahaba who, one Sahabi who said something, basically, he owed somebody money, so the other person couldn't respond because he owed that person money, right? Like, you have to self-regulate your own behavior. Is debt slavery, as somebody pointed out. So you have to self-regulate your own behavior, and I think getting out of debt for the Muslim world is very important as well.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of like the strategic global kind of strategy, Ayan Institute, a think tank, they wrote in their paper, their report towards a new Islamic civilization. They listed, you know, that the number one and number two trading partners of every Muslim majority country are USA and China, basically. So one of the strategies for long-term revival has to be for the Muslim nations themselves to increase cooperation and trade amongst themselves, to slowly, you know, get independence from these, from you know, influences and all the strings attached from other countries and stuff. But if you're just joining us, brothers and sisters, we're talking about the Stand for Uyghurs campaign and our launch, which is a demonstration this Thursday, inshallah, 1st of July. A coalition of more than 30, 40 odd mainstream Muslim organizations in the UK hosting this, but anyone and everyone is free to join. It's outside the Chinese embassy on the 1st of July. It's commemorating our Uyghur brothers and sisters said they want us to stand on this day with them because the Chinese Communist Party is commemorating 100 years, celebrating 100 years anniversary. And we're going to be standing out there, inshallah, with many talks from prominent Muslims like Sheikh Haitham al-Haddad, Moazzam Begg, Sheikh Zahir Mahmood, Anas Altikriti, Iqbal Sacranie, and many more. Outside the Embassy of the People's Republic of China in London, the nearest underground station is Regent's Park station, and also Great Portland Street. We'll have volunteers and stuff and stewards directing people around. Check out standforuyghurs.com. There's a place to sign up as well as a volunteer if you want to volunteer on the day, and just sign up as well to let us know you're coming so we have an idea of numbers and so, as well, inshallah. We've informed the council and the police and all that, and there will be alhamdulillah, social distancing and everything there, stage and speakers, all professionally organized, inshallah, officially organized. We're going to be observing social distance as well, and we're going to have t-shirts and masks as well, branded masks for standing with our Uyghur brothers and sisters, and placards and banners and flags that you can pick up on the day as well, inshallah. So please do attend 5 to 8 p.m. So jump on the tube after work, after school, college, university. Jump on the tube, Regent's Park Station or Great Portland Street Station. It's like a 2-minute walk, very close. We hope to see you there, inshallah. Subboor, you want any final words, inshallah, before we wrap it up, and Arslan then?
Yeah, I wanted Arslan to, before we go to that, to comment on, because I did speak to him about this before and we've discussed it quite a bit now. But I wanted him to also speak about this because he mentioned this to me, I think 2019 or early 2020, that it's a golden opportunity right now to speak about the Uyghur issue because of coronavirus and other anti-CCP sentiment, and this support may go. So we need to look at strategies which are long-term, which are not just dependent upon Western support for this, because you may not always get that. Because I think that's very important, because that's going to dictate how we roll out these sort of campaigns as well.
Yeah, we also have to think about this as a bigger picture thing. So, for example, when the Uyghur Tribunal happened, it didn't just happen overnight. It was years of talking about raising the Uyghur issue. For example, Dolkan Isa has been a rights activist when he was back in East Turkestan in the late 80s. Rushan Abbas as well. These guys have been doing it for 30 years. And when you think Uyghur Tribunal happens overnight, this society that we live in, where we want things to happen straight away, one hashtag, let's get it. It doesn't work that way. So perhaps this protest will lead on to something even more powerful next year or the year after. So it's a step-by-step thing. And right now, even though people saying, "Oh, we've just found out about the Uyghurs," but the only reason you found out about the Uyghurs is that footwork that has been done all these years to get it to this stage, and now you're joining in. And this is a golden opportunity for you because you want to be a part of this, not just for not just because it's the right thing to do, but think about your akhirah as well. It's worship. And right now, this issue is it's the only issue in the world where the left, the right, the British government, everyone's on board. There's no one that isn't on board besides the Chinese government. So, and it's easy as well. And hopefully this could probably, have you do more because we've got, and may Allah bless His people. So many people in Palestine, so many people in Syria, so many people in Yemen. But still, this Uyghur issue is not, it's not saturated, or so to speak. There's not enough people doing it. So we could have new voices, new activists, new players to sort of, and you may have a talent that we could use to boost this even further, and you want to be part of that journey to be a part of this. Because we look in history, go, you know, recently, for example, with Bosnia, we think, oh, I wish I was a part of that, you know, or I wish I was a part of, you know, freeing these people or that people. And, you know, this is your time. This is our time. You know, Allah is calling you. History is calling you. Yeah.
Subhanallah. Yeah, Jazakallah khairan, brother. So, really glad to have so many brothers and sisters and organizations on board. Alhamdulillah, stand for Uyghurs.com. Just another reminder, it's a longer term campaign. It's launching with the protest, the demonstration of solidarity that Uyghur brothers and sisters wanted us to get on board with. All the major masajid and the major national Islamic organizations are on board, alhamdulillah. Longer term strategy for empowering us, informing us, and giving us tools for effective action in the long term for our Uyghur brothers and sisters. And I'm getting a message every few minutes, you know, with another organization coming on board, alhamdulillah. You know, Frida mentioned the Waltham Forest Council of Mosques just now. A bunch of masjids coming on board. This brother just messaged me now. East London Mosque, GLM, Green Lane Masjid, Muslim Association of Britain, Wifaqul Ulama, the broad collection of ulama in the UK. So many, you know, the logos are on the website. Stand for Uyghurs.com. Maybe it's Subboor or someone will put it up on the screen, inshallah. Also, let us know if you're on Facebook. Click the Facebook event as well and share it with all your friends and colleagues and stuff on that day. It's very important, especially the day before and the day of the demonstration of solidarity, that we spread the word and get the people out. We'll probably maybe do another one of these and meet regularly and post on our social media feeds and so forth, and organizations about this. But yeah, shall we call it a day there?
So I just wanted to add something which I think is very important. What we need to understand is that this oppression, this genocide, this entire thing that we're trying to defend the Uyghurs from rape, sterilization, concentration camps, separation of families, and all these types of things, this is ibadah, this is worship. Okay, now when we try to pray salah, we try and have khushu, we try and focus on our words, we try and make it so that we are internalizing what we're saying. Likewise, it's very easy to just do it mechanically, right? Because it's quite natural. You see rape, sterilization, killing, millions of people in concentration camps, our masajid being desecrated, the Quran being desecrated, you know, all these types of things. So it's very easy to just do it automatically. But what we need to understand is, number one, it's an act of worship. It's an act of worship. Number two, one of the most beautiful things which Allah loves is the deeds which are consistent, even if they're small. So this is an act of ibadah which is not once or twice. It needs to become part of you, that from now on you are an Uyghur activist. From now on you are focusing on this issue. Just like, for example, I don't need to call myself a Palestinian activist, because I'm a Muslim, I'm active. Okay, I'm going to be a Palestinian activist. Alhamdulillah, you know, from the youngest memories I have, Palestine and protests and all this stuff is there. So not only is it the case that it's an act of ibadah and needs to be regular, our adversary, the country which is launching this massive war upon Islam, this is essentially what they're doing. They want to eradicate Islam like a virus. They think very long term. They have this concept of, we want to defeat other countries and become the superpower by the year 2049, because in 1949 we came to power. They have these long goals, long goals. In fact, you will find some of these Chinese Communist Party leaders, they will put together targets which they are working on now for the next century. This is the way they think. So what we need to understand is, if this issue needs to be dealt with. The issue of East Turkestan, the issue of Xinjiang, the issue of the Uyghurs and the Kazakhs and the Uzbeks and of all of these ancient Muslim groups, then it's not going to be one quick solution. It's going to be a long-term commitment, which is going to take a very long time, various different strategies that can change over time. However, we need to be absolutely persistent and consistent on this. It just cannot be you're doing a little bit and then you leave it. Even this live stream, I was a little bit disappointed with the numbers. I was like, why? If I'm doing a live stream where me, Ali, and Hijab or whatever, we're doing something funny, or it goes up to, sometimes there's like a joke we're playing and it goes high. When it comes to something like this, views drop. But then I thought, you know what? At the end of the day, the people who really do the work of Allah, the hardworking people, they're going to be the few anyway. It's not going to be the massive numbers, right? So those sincere people, I'm calling out to you and I'm asking you, please understand this is nothing short of a war upon Islam, and you are nothing short except a defender of the lives of the Muslim Uyghur brothers and sisters. And every action you do, it will echo in eternity, inshallah. Every action you do, it will be on your mizan on the day of judgment. So please do not be complacent about this and do everything you can. Tell everybody about this protest on the 1st of July. Let's get a strong number out there and let's show the Chinese Communist Party that if you pick on one Uyghur, you've picked on billions and billions and billions of Muslims, and we stretch back a millennia and we will not stop until you stop your oppression.
Allahu Akbar. Jazakumullah khairan, brothers, and all of the brothers and sisters watching and commenting and so forth. I see they're saying the Wu Mao lunch break is over. Back in the thing now. So
back.
Hello to you as well. 50 Cent Army, Chinese trolls. If you enjoyed this, please give a like and a share and spread the word to your friends. If you learn anything, please do remember to turn up on our national solidarity demonstration for the Uyghur brothers and sisters on the 1st of July, after work, after school. It's a very important day for them. They want us to show up on the 100th anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party. Google it, see what else is happening, any processions, any protests on the 1st of July. Outside the Chinese embassy, we're doing one. There's also stuff happening in Chinatown and other areas. But if you're active, even if you're not active, just come after school, after work, after college, after university, jump on a tube if you're in the area, or if you're in other parts of the country. Very quick train ride, inshallah. 5 to 8 p.m. Nearest train station is Regent's Park Tube Station, or Great Portland Street. Or if you're just shopping in Oxford Street down the road, you can just walk up, 5-minute walk, and you'll be there as well, inshallah. We'll be there with all of the 30 plus, inshallah, organizations representing, and see you there. Jazakumullah khairan. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك واشهد ان لا اله الا انت ونستغفرك ونتوب اليك وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه اجمعين والسلام عليكم ورحمه الله